you so much for joining us for a panel discussion today about student and staff mental health. My name's Sarah Griffiths. I'm Deputy Head Pastoral at Caterham School, which is a co-educational school that goes right from tinies. We've got 3-year-olds up to 18. We've got some international boarders here on site who, despite the lockdown, are still with us. And I'm delighted to be joined by colleagues from a range of different parts of our sector who all are going to help illuminate some ideas around wellbeing in general and mental health in particular. Today we've got Becky Lee, Laura Dickinson and Dr. Sadie Hollins. And Becky, I wonder, can you just give us a quick intro to you, your role and your school or your college?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So, hi everyone, lovely to be here. My name's Becky Lee. My role at the college is Head of Student Experience and Quality Improvement. I do work in an FE college, so our learners range from the age of 16 up to 99, hopefully a bit past that, you never know. Yeah, we have over 5,000 students, we have 2 campuses, and we have obviously, like everybody else, continued supporting learning as we've gone through this pandemic.
Fantastic. Laura, you're a head teacher.
Yeah, so hi everyone, lovely to be here with you all today. I'm from a totally different setting. I'm the head teacher of Finch Academy in Knowsley in Merseyside. We're a special school for SEMH. All of our pupils have an EHCP and we are very small in comparison, 80 students on roll. So a different perspective from me today.
Sure. And Sadie, you're dialing into us from Thailand today. Please tell us about your role in your school and a little bit about what it's like over there in Thailand just now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I work at Lanna International School, which is based in Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand. It's a British curriculum international school, and it goes all the way from reception up till year 13, and we've got about 720 students. At the moment, things are starting to get a little bit worse. I think we're seeing a bit of a second wave here. Things have been pretty good for a while. We've been back face-to-face teaching since the start of the new school year, but we're looking at possibly going to lockdown in the next couple of weeks, depending on how things go.
Fantastic. I guess you've joined us today because you're interested in pupil wellbeing, and I think although you'll hear from a lot of different perspectives today, all of us here have a real commitment to wellbeing being foundational in an education setting. And so I guess my first question to the panel is, when we heard for the UK-based ones that lockdown was coming again, what strategies have you put in place over 2020 that you're just immediately going to flick back into now that we've gone virtual in 2021? And Laura, could you start us off?
Yeah, so as soon as we heard the lockdown news, we are a special setting and we assume that most of our pupils will be in. We know some may stay at home. So the first thing we did was make sure that we had all of our systems set up for welfare in terms of texting students, making sure all the information, the communication's gone out. It's a worrying and anxious time for everybody. So I think the more kind of information we gave to parents and pupils over the last few days has been helpful. And that's something we set up in 2020. We've continued with text messaging to parents, which has really helped develop our relationships and kind of get them to engage more with the school. So it's been a really good thing, and we're going to continue that moving forward.
Yeah. I think with all the uncertainty that we had over Christmas holidays with government announcements, it does feel like the role of schools and colleges has been to be the voice of calm and kind of set out, it's going to be okay. And Becky, is that what you found?
Yeah. I mean, we were quite well placed in the first lockdown because we do already, include a lot of online learning in our curriculum. So from that side, we didn't have those issues where we had to get people on. So for coming into this one, I think we've just picked up and built on the things that we learn. And one of the biggest things that we learned was that our lower level learners sometimes struggled with the digital skills needed to be able to access online learning. So what we did, we'd already changed the curriculum to suit that, with the foresight that this would happen again. So they spent the first part of their curriculum or their term or school year, learning about how to access it online and be safe online, which was key to us really, because obviously if they didn't have the digital skills, they wouldn't have the digital understanding and the safety knowledge really needed. So yeah, we've similar to Laura, we've carried on with texting. We've got learners on the apps. We've got good communication channels, which I think has been key to it really.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about wellbeing, but technology and access to technology and a huge range of things all feature in there. And Becky, you said you've been doing physical school for a while now. Do you have particular kind of wellbeing strategy at school? I think you have a wellbeing program that you use. Are you planning to use that virtually as well?
Yeah, that will carry on, and it did in the last lockdown as well. So we have what we call it's a progress tutorial model, and every learner has a progress tutor attached to them. The progress tutor meets with the learners and does one-to-ones, and makes sure that they're on track and they are well. And we also have a pastoral and health and wellbeing team. So, if there are any issues that come to light, which I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, but we have seen an increase in mental health issues. Obviously, because we're dealing with some adults, there's been an increase in domestic violence issues and interventions that we've needed to put into place. So that has had to be key, really. That's been the backbone of what we've had to do, because most importantly, learners can't learn if they're not well, or if they're not, if the well-being isn't good. So that's been key. We've done additional home visits. We've really spent a lot of time and investment in making sure that we've got enough resource in the college to support mental health and well-being and pastoral.
And for many of our communities, feeding children has been something that schools have really contributed in colleges too. Sadie, what's it been like for you in Thailand? What strategies have you put in place to support mental health and wellbeing over 2020, and what will you be taking forward into 2021?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Initially, when we went into lockdown last year, I was working more in a counselling capacity. So we kind of had a series of focus groups with the students to kind of figure out what kind of support they wanted, how many students wanted to support, and what kind of issues they were having. So we offered some sort of online sessions at the time, but since we've come back to school, I definitely agree with Becky. We've seen an increase in mental health problems. And I think coming back in, we were really keen to empower kind of student voice. So we've set up a range of different initiatives that have allowed students to kind of drive our wellbeing programs. So we created student wellbeing officer roles in our student council. And they've been really pivotal, actually. We had much more interest than we thought we were going to have. We thought maybe it would just be one person, but there was a few that came forward. And they've been a part of helping write our wellbeing newsletter that goes to students, to teachers, to families, and that's been really well received. They've written for our school magazine. They've helped with our Wellbeing Week. And I think the most important thing that we've put into place this year, which has been really effective, is our lunchtime support groups. So we have male and female students in year 12 and 13 that help these kind of lunchtime support groups for younger years, and that seems to be well received. So that's kind of something we hope we'll use going forward. There's much more awareness around mental health and the need to support others, and it's really nice to have the students on board for it.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got quite a sophisticated approach to wellbeing, covering loads of different things, and I think that's perhaps what we do here at school. But when we've got into lockdown, I'm struck by how sometimes it's going back to those simple things where we're keeping our form tutor periods going, so the children get out of bed, get dressed and register first thing in the morning, and some of those, as well as all of that extra brilliant pastoral support that you've just described. And if we talk about mental health then for a second, we hear a lot in the media, particularly in the UK media, about how mental health really deteriorated for young people over lockdown and during the pandemic. As the pastoral lead here, I think there are some pupils who that definitely happened for, but I do also recognise there are some for whom working at home has improved their mental health. They've enjoyed it. Perhaps some of our learners with special educational needs have perhaps found that not the social pressure has been beneficial. Laura, what's your take on that?
Definitely, it's a mixed bag. As you said, we found some kids have flourished being at home doing online learning, some have struggled and really missed the school routine and the things you can offer on a day-to-day basis. What we found is really important is the support given to parents for mental health for their own and also the child's mental health as well. So during the first lockdown, we had our staff doing like one-to-one video calls with parents if they're having a tough week managing behaviour, or if it was all getting a bit too much, just to give them strategies to try and cope and try and assist the child's behaviour as well as where needed to referring to agencies who could assist further. And also with parents, just things like making sure everyone was fed. So we set up our own food bank system in school where we deliver food parcels, but we've carried that on during the autumn term and just kept a small stock of like 3-day food supplies for parents who may need that support. And I think more than ever, it's demonstrated that schools are the heart of the community and really do need to support students and parents through this really difficult time.
Sadie, you talked about student voice and how you've had your pupils helping out with your wellbeing. Are there any particular examples that people listening might think, oh, I might use that in my school? If you had maybe a couple of things to say, start that or use that, it's been really effective. Can you think of anything that you could share?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the newsletter's been well received. We've had teacher contributions, we've had PTO contributions, and we've had student contributions. So, and that goes across from secondary to primary school. And I think that's been really important in bringing our school together, particularly because we're across 2 campuses. And I think other students like to know what other students are doing to help their wellbeing. So I'd say that definitely worked well for us. And I think the lunchtime support sessions has worked well. We have like a PSHE curriculum here, but I think what can be challenging is the kind of multicultural nature of our school and things that are taboo from different cultures, and also a kind of misunderstanding, well, not misunderstanding, but teachers are coming from a westernized culture and a lot of our students are coming from an Asian culture. So sometimes we're not always able to discuss the issues that our students need. So I think those support groups have been really important.
I think whenever we talk about wellbeing with people from different schools, you realise how there are many common strands, but equally it's quite specific to the community that you're in. So it might be like you already said, you're feeding yours, or Becky, have you got specific things that perhaps with your community has worked really well?
Yeah. So it was, as Laura was talking and Sadie too, sort of thinking about the college that we're in. Obviously, we are sort of central, and we do have a lot of adult learners, which are parents, which are looking after the learners that are struggling, and adapting. So what we did as a college, we actually, in the first lockdown, we were already offering them, to be fair, but we just rolled them out and marketed them different. We offered free online courses for all of the local community. I think in the end, we've had about 2,000 people in the local community sign up to do courses, and they range from being safe online, mental health, working remotely, in some cases leading teams remotely. So we supported not just our learners, but we supported the wider community and also our employers. So we work a lot with employers who are dealing with young people who are, apprentices and things like that. So we just had to rethink the way we offered that support. And I think it did make us realise as a college, and I'm sure as schools you feel the same, exactly what Laura said. I don't think we realise how much we do bring into the community until a situation like this happened. And suddenly we're the ones with the tools that can support, which was a real privilege to be in that position. So it was interesting. We also, just sort of on the sort of food side of it, we do have learners that in college they get access to bursary, which is their weekly payment for not just for attending, but for joining education. And there was that dilemma right at the beginning, do you carry on pay? But this was this fed our learners, so we continued to make the payments throughout the pandemic, and we will continue to do that.
This is something we haven't tried yet, but we're looking into, is a kind of use of wellbeing apps to help us track student wellbeing, well, not track, but to keep an eye on students better. We haven't used it yet, but I think there's quite a lot of promise in doing that, and actually allowing students to let us know when they're not okay, and when maybe they wouldn't come and talk to us in person. So not best position, but I think there's a lot of promise in wellbeing apps.
I wonder if people are listening, you're very welcome to use a live chat. If you've come across an app or something useful for monitoring wellbeing remotely, you could share it with our listeners. I'm sure that would be helpful. Becki, you're a tech specialist. What barriers have you found, or how have you overcome that to kind of get people, accessing your education?
Yeah, okay. So as I started off, we were already doing an element of online learning within the course programmes. So, when we switched, we literally could switch overnight. People were familiar with our VLE. From a wellbeing point of view on the VLE, we have an area, and it's called Health and Wellbeing. And within that area, there's access to all different apps, resources. There's a contact us button, so they can come straight directly to the Pastoral and Welfare team. So we were lucky in that we had those in place. Then I think what happened through the lockdown is that the value of those resources became more apparent. Where in a day-to-day setting where you're teaching and meeting with your learners, excuse me, you can check in on them quite easily because you're face-to-face, whereas we were relying quite heavily on some of these resources. One of the things around technology that I do feel impacted both ways on learners was access to IT. And, Sadie said it straight away, if you've got access, then it makes that challenge slightly different. But we found that we come from one of the most deprived areas in England, really. And basically, we found a lot of our learners didn't have access outside of college to online learning. So by the end of this week, I've just been totting up where we're up to with our laptops. As a college, we actually have invested and purchased, by the end of this week, we'll hit our 1,000 laptops that we've distributed and given out. And I've just put an order through to SLT for another 350. So it's a significant amount of our learners that not necessarily didn't have access to IT, but it was if they were adult learners and their children were working at home, then everybody needed that one piece of equipment. So we've kind of struggled with that. But yeah, I think that for me was the biggest barrier. Was the actual access to IT and also Wi-Fi, which in today's day and age you wouldn't think it should be another utility, shouldn't it really? But yeah, those were the two challenges.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to switch tack because I know that you've done some quite innovative things about staff wellbeing. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about the measures you put in place to support staff wellbeing over the pandemic.
Definitely. I think since the pandemic hit, it's become clear how important it is to invest in your staff and their well-being. If your staff aren't happy and well, they can't look after the kids, can they? And they can't give their best to the work. So I think it was really important for us to really kind of refresh our wellbeing strategy and put all the focus on making sure the staff were well looked after, well supported and able to do the jobs to the best of their ability. So the first thing we did was designate a wellbeing governor, a wellbeing member of staff to lead the wellbeing approach. Then we got staff to kind of buy in, give us ideas, give us things that they would like to do. One of the things we do is Wellbeing Wednesdays, where we down tools as soon as the kids leave on a Wednesday afternoon, and then the staff can take part in an activity of their choice. It's all voluntary, so if staff prefer, they could leave, but we've had things like pub quizzes, like yoga sessions, football tournaments. You name it, just something to kind of bring a bit of fun into the day and kind of give staff the chance to connect with each other and relax and kind of bond as a team, things like that. We've also given staff extra PPA as far as possible to kind of reflect the intensity of the job they do here with SEMH young people, and things like access to staff counselling sessions through our Academy Trust. So there's loads we've done, but I think it's been really, really important that staff have been a massive focus rather than just the kids as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Sadie and Becki, do you have anything particular to add about staff wellbeing?
I think what historically has been good about our school is the culture and the environment, and the trust that we feel as teachers to do our job. And I think having that culture and taking that into lockdown has kind of really helped with staff wellbeing. It's not something tangible, it's not something I can kind of put my finger on, but I think having trust amongst staff, having trust amongst staff and leadership, I think is the key to staff wellbeing. I think that underpins everything else.
Yes, I guess you can do all the initiatives you like, but if you haven't got trust and a safe environment, you're never going to be able to build that up amongst your staff.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to sort of echo that. Really, it was for us the communication from the SLT, from the leadership team, making sure that in the crazy times that we were in and we are in, that we're communicating as best we can, letting staff know what the next steps are, what the potential plans are. From health and wellbeing point of view, we also, very similar to Laura, did lots of activities. We had a coffee and chat mornings with the principal. We done a health and wellbeing day where we literally, it was no learners online. It was everybody was online doing, health and wellbeing range of activities. And I think that was key, really. And also, we have mental health first aiders, trained mental health first aiders, which have been pivotal, not just for the learners, but also for the staff, and those, that's been really sort of well utilised, if you like. I think the other side of it, what we thought was the training. Staff needed the training, the guidance and the confidence to be able to switch to an online environment. So we found that by providing that, making sure that everybody was confident, or as confident as it could be at that initial stage on, using tools online, that helped to settle staff, to make them feel more comfortable working with learners in a different way. So it's a combination, like Sadie said, you can't pinpoint one thing. It's that combination, it's that holistic way of working with teams.
If you're sitting there thinking, I'd quite like to get involved with wellbeing, but where do I start? I wonder, panel, do you think you could give us, where would you start if somebody was thinking, I haven't done too much yet, but I really want to really go for wellbeing in my school setting? Laura, perhaps could you start us off?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do would be to audit your provision, maybe get surveys out to staff, parents, pupils, get some feedback. You might be doing lots of things really well already and actually just need that feedback to kind of reassure what you're doing, and then go from there. Involve the kids, involve the student council, involve parents, maybe designate wellbeing leads on your governors, maybe a parent representative as well, maybe some student representatives, and just come up with ideas and start planning.
And Becki, what about you? Have you got a top tip?
Yeah, I think talk to your learners. Learner voices, it decides everything we do. In the same way, Laura's just said about collecting feedback. We've got student governors. We've got, we've got a principal's question time, another one online this week. It's about having that open communication, because I think when people feel involved, that pushes that success rate through, and it also gives people the opportunity to be able to express when they need support and feel in a safe enough environment to do so. So, yeah, I think the starting point is just talking.
Yeah, thank you. And Sadie?
Engaging the process of counselling yourself, I think is really important. Increasing your own self-awareness about what impacts your own well-being will then, I think, help you tune into others. So I think even that process can help you better help students.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we're out of time now, folks. But if you want to pick up with any of the people you've heard today, we'll be putting our contact details in the chat. So look out there, or you can look on the Bett website where all of our contact details are up there. I guess it remains for me to just say a huge thank you to our panellists for sharing their ideas, particularly when we're in a state of much flux over in the UK schools just now. So thank you so much, panellists, for joining us, and for those at home who've joined us. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.